Hello, welcome to my channel, and welcome back if you are a returning subscriber or viewer. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. Today I wanted to share some French country DIYs that are super easy to do using some items I had in my stash. If you like this video, don't forget to give me a thumbs up, like and share, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Let's get on with these DIYs. So this set of albums is something that I already had in my stash. I've had it for years. I liked it before. It has sort of that vintage look to it, but I wanted to repurpose it, or shall I say give it a facelift, just using some paint. So this paint color here is the color Oyster, and this is by the Art Minds brand, sold at Michael's. So as you can see here, I'm just painting the borders of that box that holds the album, since I will be covering up the surface with some scrapbook paper. And just in case I was short on the scrapbook paper, I wanted to make sure that the edges were painted. So I'm taking some scrapbook paper in the designs that I wanted to use, and here I'm just using mostly blues and creams. I'm not usually a blue type of decorator, but I do like it once in a while, especially with the French country look. I think it just goes really well. So here I'm just taking some pieces of the scrapbook papers that I wanted to use, and these are just coordinating. Some are in stripes and the others in florals. The florals have some bird patterns on it, which I really adore because I do favor birds a lot in my decorating. So I did cut those pieces of square scrapbook paper down to size, just tracing out the size of the box. But moving on, I will be painting these albums. It comes in a set of 3, and they're not like a picture album with sleeves or anything like that. They're just filled with paper. I'm not going to use the inside. I just wanted to decorate the outside just for decorative purposes. So I use the same paint color and that oyster color, painting the exterior of each album. And adding a little more French country flair to this, I wanted to use some of this number or numeral stamps. This is the IOD stamps in the letterpress, and it comes with these sets of numbers as well. So I'm just going to take the larger set of the numbers and just stamp on the 1, 2, and 3. Again, it's just giving it more of that French country vibe that I like. And I'm just using some of this stamp ink pad. It's not like stays on or anything like that. This is something I already owned for many years. It's the Distress ink by Tim Holtz. But if you have stays on ink or any other type of ink that you want to use, go ahead and feel free to do so. I'm just using what I already have on hand. So as you can see here, I did sort of smear the ink. So I'm just touching up any areas that have the black ink smeared on to it, just using some of that oyster chalk paint. Next, I wanted to create more decorative element to this. I could have left it the way it is. It looks perfectly fine the way it looks. However, I decided to use some of this vinyl. It's a faux vinyl, like faux leather vinyl by the Crafter Square brand, and this is in the white color. I decided to create some sort of pull or handle for each of the albums. So I was sort of playing around with the idea and how I wanted to create this handle. I essentially went with the idea of just cutting strips and then folding them inwards on each side just to have more of a clean finish or a clean edge. So once you have the sizing down and the width down to what you want your handle to be, you'll just want to go ahead and take that first sample that you made and just use that as a template for your other handles that you'll be creating. I believe I was able to make 2 handles out of this one strip. I did mess up on one, so I had to go back and make another handle. Just by cutting a little too short. So that's where you want to be careful, is just make sure that you err on the side of caution. It's better to cut a little longer piece than as opposed to cutting a shorter piece, because then you'll have to start over like I did. So here I went ahead and took that strip and cut it down to the size I wanted my handle to be, and I just eyeballed it and just sort of, you know, played around with the sizing and whatnot. And once I had that down, I went ahead and cut the rest of my strips to the size that I want all my handles to be. So then next was the question of how I was going to adhere these handles to the binding or the albums. I could have used hot glue, but I wasn't sure how well the hot glue would stick with that faux leather to that painted surface. I believe I did actually try using hot glue in a little piece, and I think it ended up coming up. So I decided to go with an alternative option. You'll see here in a second what I did. I'll go ahead and explain. I did take some tape that came from Dollar Tree. It's the super glue tape. It's supposed to hold like a good amount of weight. So I went ahead and just used that, cutting down a strip that would lay flat underneath that faux leather vinyl, just like that. I'm just sort of sizing it out. You want to cut just a little shorter of a length than your actual leather piece, just to make sure that it's concealed underneath, because the last thing you need is to have an overhanging of the tape, because then everything will get stuck to it. So here I just went ahead and cut off a piece, folded down the faux leather vinyl, and just made a little loop just so your finger can go into it. And like you see there, you can essentially pull the album out much easier. Also, I did forget to mention that before I added that tape to the actual pull, I did have to adhere the leather vinyl to the album itself so that it can be stabilized. So I did that by adding some hot glue and inserting that piece, the edge of that piece of the vinyl into the binding itself so that it's hidden. And then it did make for a sturdy handle. And here's the finished look. I really love the outcome. Very French country to me. Super cute. I hope you guys like this one. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. And now we're on to the second project. So taking some of these boxes that came from Dollar Tree, again, I've had this in my stash for a while. I was deciding on whether I was going to remove the paper from it, but decided that it would be too much work because I wasn't really sure how well they were stuck onto the carton. So eventually I decided to just paint over the design and the paper. And it took a couple coats of this DIY paint. It is in the color Old 57. So after covering the bases of the boxes, I went ahead and colored or painted the lids in that same oyster chalk paint color as I did in the first DIY. And I really like the contrast of it. It sort of mutes the color of that turquoise, which is very bright. So then I went ahead and got some of this scrapbook paper that I wanted to use in this very cute design. It has a shabby chic feel to it. And cut strips in the width that I wanted my stripes to be. So here again, I'm just eyeballing the sizing, no rhyme or reason, just deciding on what looked good to me. You can customize this to your own preference. This is what I went with, so you can certainly follow along exactly how I did it. But I don't have exact measurements because it's all going to depend on the size of your box as well as how wide you want your strips to look. So after deciding on the width, I went ahead and just eyeballed by gluing each of those strips to my carton. Now, this did not come out perfect whatsoever. I wouldn't say that I have each of the spacing between those strips of paper even, which doesn't bother me a bit actually. But if you're very particular about spacing and having everything all lined up and equally spaced out, then you'll definitely want to measure in between your stripes. But it wasn't an issue for me, so I just went with it and just continued to glue down my strips of paper. covering the majority of that box. And as you can see, you can see the turquoise in between each of the paper pieces. And in the end, I noticed that I had to, you know, glue down my last piece of paper, and then it essentially came out uneven compared to the rest of the spacing. But again, it doesn't bother me, so I just went along with how it was going. Next, I decided to distress it using some antique wax by Waverly. And because the turquoise color is rather on the bright side, I did need to tone it down a bit. Again, just giving it a little more French country, shabby chic look to it. I don't like things to look super new. I want them to look older, like they've been around, more distressed, rustic. So if that's not your type of look, then you can definitely bypass using antique wax and just leave it in its natural state. Then I went ahead and took the same paper that I used to make those stripes, and taking my smaller of the two cartons, I went ahead and cut out just the little floral pattern that was on this paper. I was going to go with the same idea of doing stripes, but I did want to make this a little different. Just wanted them to coordinate with each other but not be matchy-matchy. But again, if you're into things looking exactly even and, you know, matchy-matchy, then you can definitely keep with the same idea of using the strips, the scrapbook strips, and just keep with a striping look. But I went ahead and decided to make it look a little different just by cutting around the roses, and then just using some decoupage to glue those on to this carton. And I'm going to do the same thing as I did with the first to give it a little more rustic feel. I went ahead and used some of the antique wax and just wiped that on over the entire piece and then wiped off the excess. And you'll see that here in just a second. Oh, and I did forget to mention, because this video is going pretty fast, is for the first bigger carton, I did use redesign stamp in the IC Paris designs. And I used one of their stamps, which I stamped on with some of that ink by Tim Holtz, and just that was the focal point or the center piece of that first carton. But for the second one, as you can see here, I'm going ahead and distressing the entire piece. And then after I'm done with this part, I'm going to also take that redesigned stamp, and this time using different designs. Like some say Paris, some are the bees, and then there's also the crown. So I'm just sort of spreading that out, you know, throughout this carton, you know, just giving it a little more extra decorative flair and that French country look until I was content with how this piece is coming out. So you can speed up the drying process just using a heat gun, just as I did. And then you'll want to make sure that you do the same thing to your lids, just making sure to add some of that distress wax so that everything is cohesive. Next thing I wanted to do was add some knobs to these lids. And these acrylic knobs, they came from a Dollar Tree glass bottle that they sell. I actually did a DIY on some glass bottles, and those are the acrylic lids that came with them, which I did not use for that project that I did a video on. So it is important and a good idea to always keep bits and pieces that come from other things that you may not be necessarily using for that project, because you never know when it's going to come in handy for another. So for this one, I went ahead and created a hole just using a knife, or actually my scissors. I poked up my scissor through it just like that and just sort of twisted it around just to make that hole big enough for that knob to fit in. And what's great about the knob is that it does have that little stopper attached to the bottom. It's made of plastic, so that was perfect for inserting into that hole. And to make it look more cleaner, I went ahead and added some jute string to the bottom with some hot glue for added reinforcement. And this is a finished look. I love how it came out, and it goes super well with that first DIY. And then we're on to project 3. This is one of those faux books that come from Dollar Tree, and this was around the time of Halloween when they came out with this. But they usually come out with stuff like this for just about every season. They have it for Christmas, maybe Easter. I'm not really sure, but I've seen them around for many holidays. But this is the one that was around the time of Halloween last year. I didn't get a chance to use it, but I'm going to go ahead and repurpose it for this project. So first thing I did was to paint the lid and the whole exterior in this oyster color, again by Art Minds from Michaels. And ignore the fact that there's some scrapbook paper already attached to the bottom. I did end up removing that. I didn't like the way that looked, so I removed that and then ended up painting that bottom portion of this faux book in the color, I believe it's Aviary by DIY. So you want to make sure that you paint over all the areas and surfaces that's going to be exposed. So this is the interior flap. And since this book will be used as a container and will be kept open, you will be seeing the inside of this, so it will be exposed. Therefore, that is why I painted the inside, because it's going to be exposed and seen, and you just want everything to have a clean finish. So as I mentioned, I will be painting that bottom part of the box in this aviary color. It's a really pretty green. It looks darker in the bottle, but it dries a little lighter. Here I'm just gluing that piece of flap that sort of came undone, and just making sure that it has good adhesion to the box, because as I mentioned, it will be holding something. So you'll want to go ahead and paint the bottom part of your box. You can paint this all one solid color, but I like the two-tone look. It adds a little more interest, and I'm always down to give my projects a little more of an interesting look and not be just monotone. So I thought these two colors went well together. And then I'm painting the inside as well, just the trim area, as you can see, because that too will be seen. This is a piece of wood that it came from Dollar Tree, and it came in a pack, and I'm going to be using that as a support or a means for the flap of the box to stay open. So first I took some antique wax and just gave that a good coloring. And here's the redesigned stamp that I will be using to embellish the outside of this box. If you don't have this stamp set, you can certainly use any types of stamps that you have on hand, or if you have IOD stamps, you can also use those as an alternative. If you don't have stamps at all, you can use stickers or rub-on transfers from Dollar Tree. They do carry a whole bunch of options these days. So as you see here, I'm painting these discs. So they're like coasters. I believe that came from, like, I don't know where it came from, but it was given to me. So I wanted to just repurpose those. They could be coasters, but they're nothing special. They are just plain wood. I wanted to embellish these and make them more decorative. So I decided to paint them in the same oyster color. And At first, I was debating on whether I was going to add some rub-on transfers to them, but went ahead and decided on just stamping them. But before I get to that part, I did use some of this POTS transfer from IOD and just embellish the box a little more, just adding a transfer here and there. And I also didn't like how the inside of this box looked. It just looked unfinished and messy, so I did add a piece of paper to line the inside just for more of a clean look. And I just used some glue stick to adhere that paper as a liner. Next, it was time to stamp some designs. This is the IOD kind of disregard stamp. And what I should have done was stamped over that wood piece before attaching it to the box. So that was a mistake on my part. So if you're going to do this, make sure that you do your stamping ahead of time before you actually glue the wood piece, because it was a little challenging to get the stamp down to the bottom of that wood. So I wasn't able to do that. So next came the time to embellish these discs, and these are going to be coasters if you haven't already guessed. So I'm making a set of coasters, and that box will essentially be the holder or the container for them. And just using these redesigned stamps, I will be stamping the images onto each of these coasters. Now you can add like cork to the bottom if you want, or you can add little feet if you want. I'm not sure if I'm going to do that. I didn't do it in this video, but if I decide to later on, that's always an option. But I will also be top coating this with some waterproof Mod Podge. Again, that will not be seen in this video. It's pretty basic. It's just painting on some Mod Podge over each of these coasters just for added protection. So this is how it was coming out. It was coming out super cute. These designs on the stamps is adorable and just perfect for the look I was going for. And next I was continuing to add more of these vinyl transfers. It's the Ephemera Melange by IOD, and just embellishing this box a little bit more, adding these little labels here and there, and that really finished off how that looked, and I really liked it. But the last step here was to add a ribbon or a small simple bow, just making a shoestring bow out of this Dollar Tree ribbon and gluing it to the corner, as well as adding a silk flower embellishment. Then you just tuck your coasters inside, and voila, you have this adorable coaster set that you can give as a gift or keep for yourself. I love how this came out. It's super functional and decorative and would look great on a side table or your buffet. And I just love how it came out. I hope you guys like it too. Please leave me a comment and let me know what you think. And don't forget, if you like any of my videos or enjoy my content, please subscribe to my channel. It really does help my channel to grow. Hit that notification bell so that YouTube can notify you every time I upload a new video. Don't forget to give me a thumbs up and share my videos. Again, every little bit helps my channel to be noticed just a little bit more and allows other viewers to see my content. I really do appreciate each and every one of you, especially to all my subscribers and returning viewers. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.